Hey guys, so I had to find a quiet place in my house, which was hard to do because I have um, 4 kids here with me full time right now. So 2 college kids and 2 high schoolers who are out and about through the house and working online for their classes and things like that. So I finally found a quiet space so I can start the read aloud book with you. After all the votes came in, this is the book that got the most votes. So it's the book called Escape from Alcatraz, The Mystery of the 3 Men Who Escaped from the Rock. And if you don't know anything about Alcatraz, they call it the Rock because it's on an island all by itself off the coast of California. And the prison is no longer open, but I know you can go there as a tourist and take a tour, so that's kind of cool if you ever get out that way. Something I want to do and just haven't been able to do yet. So I'm going to start and start reading this book aloud, and I hope you enjoy it. So chapter 1 is called Sound the Alarm. At the crack of dawn, cell block B in the Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was silent and dark. Clarence Carnes, a longtime prisoner, lay on his bunk, already awake. He'd barely slept all night. Suddenly, the wake-up bell rang out, just as it did every morning, and the prisoners began to stir. They had 15 minutes to get out of bed, go to the bathroom, and get dressed. Some stayed in bed to grab a few extra minutes of sleep. After 15 minutes, a whistle pierced the air, and the prisoners walked to the front of their cells. It was time for the morning head count. Carnes was one of the first inmates at the front of his cell. He stood eagerly at the bars and looked around. He listened as the guards walked down the aisle and counted prisoners one at a time. He had reason to believe that the count might be short this morning. His friends had planned a daring overnight escape from the escape-proof prison. He hoped that they had made it. What Carnes heard next made his heart leap. One of the guards called for a recount. It was possible that the guard had simply made a mistake and needed to count again. But Carnes didn't think so. His friends were smart, and they had a good plan. They had been working on their escape for months and had been painstaking about every last detail. Right now, Carnes imagined they were breathing fresh outside air. He suppressed a smile as Officer Lawrence Bartlett, the guard on duty, counted again. Officer Bartlett soon noticed that prisoner John J.W. Anglin had not gotten up. He walked over, reached between the bars, and tapped the prisoner's pillow. But Anglin did not respond. Bartlett called Lieutenant Bill Long down for a look. He told Long that Anglin was either dead or he had been replaced by a life-size dummy. Long poked Anglin's head, and still Anglin just lay there. He poked it again, harder, and this time his fingers pushed right through. Startled, he swatted the head, and it rolled off the bunk onto the floor. It was a dummy. Long jumped back. Long reached through the bars, yanked the blanket down, and saw rolled up blankets and clothes that Anglin had placed there to look like his body. He quickly went to the next cell, that of Clarence Anglin, John's brother, and pulled off his blanket. Clarence's bed was also filled with blankets and a fake head. There was one more prisoner missing from the head count, Frank Morris. Long dashed over to Morris's cell and pulled the covers off his dummy head and blankets. He was gone too. A call was made to acting warden Arthur Dullison. He lived in a duplex on the island with his family. When the phone rang in his home, Dullison felt a chill of dread go through him. It could not be good news to get a phone call right after the morning count. As he and more officers rushed to the cell block, an escape alarm blared throughout the prison and all across the island, indoors and out. Adding to the commotion, another prisoner was calling out to the guards from his cell. "I planned the entire escape," Alan West cried out. In his hands, he held what looked like a vent cover, only it was made of cardboard. Meanwhile, officers climbed up on top of cell block B, which was constructed of prison cells, stacked 3 high. Looking up, they saw a roof vent that had its bars removed. The prisoners had gone through there. The vent shaft led to the roof and was capped by a rain hood. But when the officers got to the roof, they saw that the rain hood had been knocked aside. On the north side of the building, barbed wire had been cut from the fence. Outside the fence, the grass was matted down as if people had been there. The officers could hardly believe their eyes. The rock, the impenetrable fortress of Alcatraz, had been breached. Dozens of officers fanned out all over the island. They searched the cell house, the workshops, the storerooms, and other buildings. They checked an old dungeon below the cell house. They scoured the beaches, tramped through the shrubbery, and inspected the caves along the shore. By boat, they patrolled the water around the island looking for bodies in the cold, churning sea. At this point, Alcatraz officers realized that Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin were most likely not on the island anymore. They called the San Francisco office of the FBI and informed them of what had happened. The FBI alerted the local police, the California Highway Patrol, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Coast Guard, and all the sheriff's offices in the area. A search was begun by land, air, and sea. It was 7:55 a.m., about 40 minutes after the morning head count, and a federal investigation was underway. Back in Cell Block B, officers questioned other prisoners, including Clarence Carnes and Alan West. Years later, Carnes claimed to know a lot about the escape. He said he had helped Morris and the Anglin brothers with several details, but he kept his mouth shut at the time and hoped others would too. Many prisoners had learned about the escape. They had heard the men digging in their cells at night, but nobody said a word to the officers. The situation was different for West. In the back of his cell, where there would have been an air vent, was a gaping hole. He had chipped away the concrete around the vent and knocked it out, and he had created a fake vent cover from cardboard. It was obvious that West was supposed to escape with the others, but something had gone wrong for him. He knew he could not hide his involvement with the plan, so he gave short answers to the officers' questions, but he was careful not to reveal too much. Chances are he didn't want to sabotage his friend's shot at freedom. While West was being questioned in the warden's office, the rest of the cell house was searched. Up above Cell Block B, investigators noticed that blankets had been hung from the bars that enclosed the area between the top of the cell block and the ceiling. What they found behind those blankets was stunning. A secret workshop full of tools, including a homemade wrench, a foot-long file, a stapler, a mirror, a flashlight, 3 spoon handles, and more. They also found a rubber raft and a life preserver, both of which the prisoners had made out of raincoats and left behind for West. There was even a vacuum cleaner motor that the prisoners had used to power a drill. In Frank Morris's cell, they found magazine articles that explained how to make rafts and life jackets. John Anglin's cell contained art supplies, and the paint had been used on the dummy heads. Clarence Anglin's cell had knots of human hair left over from the dummy heads and more paint. One of the more interesting things the investigators found was in Alan West's cell, a road atlas of North America with the pages for Mexico removed. His cell also contained 3 hacksaw blades, 3 more spoons, and a chisel. The scope of the escape was incredible and complicated. All those stolen or improvised tools, a virtual hardware store hidden behind blankets, holes dug through 8 inches of concrete, with spoon handles and other rigged utensils. It was clear that the escapees had planned it for a long time. They had thought of everything, and they had a 9-hour head start. The search expanded rapidly and was conducted by sea, land, and air. It covered the entire western United States. Highway patrol officers stopped and searched vehicles. Photos of the men appeared on newspapers all over the world. Where could they be? The FBI believed that the men could have made it ashore and were on the run, but the men had no money, no clothes, and no food. They were career criminals. Surely they would make a mistake sooner or later, like getting caught in a robbery, for instance. The FBI carefully monitored the Anglin family home in Florida in case the men turned up there or made a phone call to their relatives. A week after the escape, Warden Olin Blackwell received a postcard dated 2 days earlier. It said, "Ha ha, we made it," and was signed Frank, John, and Clarence. Blackwell gave the postcard to the FBI, but they didn't have enough handwriting samples from the prisoners to make a good comparison. They thought it was probably fake, but as the days went on and no bodies turned up, it seemed more possible that the men had successfully escaped. That is certainly what Clarence Carnes and most of the other inmates believed. Carnes had escaped other prisons, so he knew it could be done, and he knew that his friends had worked hard on their plan. Alcatraz was not escape-proof, as the warden had always claimed. Even though Carnes was still stuck inside, Alcatraz had been beaten. He didn't necessarily think that he would escape, but it felt good to know someone had. Even Alcatraz couldn't kill all hope. That was the end of chapter 1. So the next video, we'll start chapter 2, called Life on the Rock. Start thinking about what those prisoners who did escape are doing. Make some predictions about what you think they're doing and where they are. Start thinking about how all of those workers at the prison are in a panic, and what they're feeling and going through at this moment. And also about the other prisoners who were friends with the escapees who are left behind. How are they feeling? All right. Hope you're enjoying this book so far. I'll see you guys soon. Miss you.